So hi everyone and welcome to the latest edition of You Are My Boro, brought to you from the Northern Echo with myself, Scott Wilson, and my fellow Northern Echo Boro writer, Dom Shaw. Hiya, Dom.
Hiya, mate. All right.
Yeah, not so bad. We're getting nearer now, aren't we? It feels like, just over a couple of weeks away now. It's getting near to the proper stuff.
We are indeed. I had my first taste of Boro pre-season on Wednesday night at Rotherham. I didn't tell you actually on the phone when we spoke this morning. We very, very nearly got locked in at the New York.
That's a classic pre-season of that, isn't it?
It was like a desperate dash after like 4 or 5 locked doors. All the lights are out, and then you suddenly start to think, "Hold on, we might be in a spot of bother here." Anyway, in the end, some security bloke who was stuffing his face with a sausage roll came while we're rescuing. He wasn't too pleased to see us. He clearly thought we'd gone, but we got out. That was.
Do you know the nearest I've ever been to being locked in a football ground? And this is going to make this is straight away. Whatever the football equivalent of name dropping is, this is it. The Millennium Stadium after Boro won the Carling Cup.
Really?
Yeah, because they obviously won it, and we had a supplement to hastily pull together. So there was a couple of us down there, and we were rattling out till, they were literally turning the lights off. But how it used to be, I don't know if it still is at the Millennium Stadium, because I haven't been for a while, but it used to be that the press room was all on one side, but then where the players and everyone came to for their interviews was completely the other side of the stadium.
Right.
And there was various bits, if you imagine it, to stop you getting round. There was various gates that they could lock at various junctures to stop you getting back. So we were just staying over the other side doing our work. And yeah, my goodness, I think we had to get out on the pitch eventually to actually find a way through. But that was the nearest.
It's no bad thing though, is it? Having to wander over the Millennium Stadium.
Exactly.
Yeah, that bit. I like Rotherham. I like going to Rotherham. I like New York Stadium. But if you're going to be locked in a ground, I think I'd rather be locked in the Millennium.
It's better than the New York Stadium in mid-July, let's be honest. But that brings us right round to it. So let's get into it. I mean, as ever, thanks very much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, send us any questions that you've got. And if you're listening on the podcast, then do the same there. Obviously, subscribe and it'll drop in to your podcast basket whenever we do a new one of these. We're going to be doing 2 a week once the season gets up and running. But speaking of the season getting up and running, we've had, 3 pre-season games now, the Hartlepool and York doubleheader. And then, as you say, Rotherham on Wednesday night. And it's probably Rotherham on Wednesday night that's the one we'll hone in on most. That probably the one that tells us the most. So A, how did you find it? And B, what, if anything, have we learned about the new signings and about the way things are maybe shaping up ahead of the season post Rotherham, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think when you look at that the first half team, especially that Michael Carrick named, and it was by no means full strength, because if you were going to name Carrick's team for the starting 11 from the squad he's got now tomorrow, you'd have Riley McGree in there, for example, wouldn't you? And you'd have Dael Fry in there alongside.
Chuba, obviously. Yeah,
Chuba as well. So it wasn't full strength, but his team in the first half in particular was senior and strong. And in the first half, Boro were really good. There was kind of a higher intensity than what you'd normally see in pre-season. And they gave Rotherham the runaround, and they should have scored 4 or 5. I mean, Morgan Rogers could have had a hat-trick. I was talking to the lad Matt who covered Blackpool last season a couple of weeks back when Boro signed Rogers, and he was telling me that Rogers did play up front for Blackpool, but he's a winger. He's a winger by trade. That's where he's most comfortable. And I don't doubt that. But he looked good leading the line last night. All but, he should have helped himself to a few goals, although Johansson in goal for Rotherham was really good. But there was no shortage of positives. Hackney bossed it in the middle. Thought Coulson was really good on the left, linked up well with Silver.
Yeah, we'll come to the left-back situation in a minute. But yeah, he's right back in the thick of it, isn't he?
Yeah, and then obviously Martin Payero's first inclusion in 15 months, which we can talk about in more length, I'm sure. But he it's hard to come into it, isn't it? For the first time, it's his first outing of the summer. Obviously, he was given an extended break after his loan spell with Boca Juniors. He was neat and tidy in the number 10 role. It'll be interesting to see how things progress there. And then obviously in the second half, Boro made changes. There were still. It was a younger team, the likes of Jack Stott, who was really impressive. Hannah at the back, Terrell Aguiman at right back, who looked solid there, although he wasn't tested defensively. But then, Matt Crooks, Marcus Force, Dael Fry, Riley McGree. And although the intensity dropped in the second half, it was still a stroll in the park, really, for Bury. I know you can't read into friendlies, but you wouldn't have guessed watching that it was two teams in the same division, which I guess, it's either promising from Borough's perspective, worrying from Rotherham's perspective, a bit of both, or neither, if you want to.
Or anything. Yeah. So let's focus in on the new signings then. So would you say Rodgers impressed you the most?
I think so. I was looking forward to see Van den Berg. So you watched Van den Berg at the weekend?
No, I was at Pools and he didn't play.
Sorry, you were at Pools and
he played game.
Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Van den Berg, but the defense just weren't troubled, and it was a stroll for him, really. Rodgers looked really sharp, ran the channels well, gave Pua Grant Hall a run around, and linked up well with Payero and Jones and Silvera. Silvera looked bright on the left. I thought, obviously got his goal, took that well, and linked up well with Coulson. And Senny Dieng and Tom Glover, who obviously played 45 minutes each. Again, Glover made one good save in the first half in a rare Rotherham attack. But other than that, they didn't have anything to do.
So, in terms of the younger lads that we've seen in pre-season, then, obviously, I was at Pools where quite a few of the younger lads played, and it was a nasty old night. It was lashing down with rain. As ever at the Vic, it was freezing cold.
Yeah, you rang me at 10 o'clock.
There was a lot of changes with it being the first game, but I thought, if anything, a number of the younger lads probably missed their opportunity there to really catch the eye and impress. I thought Aguiman, actually, it's funny you said that, because he played kind of holding midfield in the game at Pools, and I thought he looked pretty good in patches, but in a very defensive role. Funny enough, I thought it was when he strode forward that he actually looked better than when he was doing the defensive side of it. But, I mean, in terms of the younger lads, as I say, we'll get on to Coulson and the likes in a minute, but of the real young lads, is there anyone who you think's really put themselves forward? I'm not sure as yet.
Stott was brilliant on Wednesday night in the second half. He did what Hackney did in the first half, just completely ran it. And he had a hand in the second goal, kind of drop of a shoulder, and then drove through a gap and picked out Hoppy, found Gilbert, created something from nothing, really. Now, I'm not suggesting that Stott will be first team ready. But you look at him, they might well look at him and think, right, he's ready for a year now on loan somewhere. And it's interesting because I was at Darlington Borough under 21s on Tuesday night and had a chat with Alan Armstrong, the Darlington boss, afterwards. And Armstrong was chatting about Borough's youngsters because he knows a fair few of them from his time coaching at Borough. And he was saying, when you come up against the Borough team, that they're going to move the ball really well because they're all so well coached. But he said, I remember this time last year when we played the under 21s and Hayden Hackney was in the 21s team.
Yeah.
It just shows, doesn't it, how quickly things can change. Now, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that Stott is going to do a Hackney and be a first team player, but he's the one who caught the eye. And I do wonder, Carrick talks, doesn't he, about finding that balance for the young players and whether certain individuals it's right for a loan now, or right to have them in with the first team, or right to leave them with the 21s. I think Stott's one of those who'll be at the forefront of the thoughts and, right, what's best for him now. And just quickly on the subject of Darlow, Borough's under 21s won 3-2 there. And Dan Nakaruma, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, but the lad that signed from Leyton Orient earlier this year, he scored 2 goals. And he's raw, but there's definitely something there.
Definitely looks like there's something there.
He's strong and he took his goals well. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses as well.
You touched on Payero there. I mean, obviously, there's been understandably quite a lot of interest in terms of him coming back. Obviously, had the year back at Boca, which seems to have inspired Borough's new away kit, which we
I was going to say you're a big fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah. I know it's had mixed reviews. I like it. But anyway, I had the year at Boca. Boca had the option to sign him, didn't. So he's come back. And obviously, it's where are we now with Martin Payero? Because, a lot of excitement when he first came, off the back of Argentina at the World Cup, etc. didn't work for him. I think we all know that. Certainly didn't really work under Warnock. Absolutely didn't work under Wilder, who sent him out as quickly as he could. But it feels like his skill set is better suited to Michael Carrick. Certainly feels like it's better suited to the way that Carrick's got Boro playing as opposed to how Warnock or Wilder had them playing. So, does that mean Martin Payero is now banging the mix for the first team next season, either starting or being on the bench for that opening game of the season in a couple of weeks' time? Or are we jumping the gun a bit there? What do you think?
I think that feels like a jump at this stage to say he's banging the mix. But what I would say is I think he'll certainly be given the opportunity over the next couple of weeks to stake his claim. We know that Boca obviously didn't take the option up on making Piero's loan permanent, but he's still going into the final 12 months of his deal. At this stage, you'd still say that his future is uncertain. And I completely agree that Carrick does look better suited to getting a tune out of Payero as opposed to Warnock and Wilder. And yet, if you look at the facts, if he's gonna play in midfield, then he's got to break in ahead of Johnny Howson, Hayden Hackney, Dan Barlaser, and possibly one more. We've talked at length, haven't we, about the fact Boro are likely to try and bring in a midfielder. If he's going to play number 10, then as things stand, he's got the small matter of displacing Chuba Akpom. So I think first things first, it still looks a big ask for him to get in the team. But that said, last year at varying stages, you wouldn't have thought that Akpom would go on to do what he's doing, or Hackney. It still feels to me that it feels more probable that he moves on, I think, than he becomes a regular first team player, just because of the fact he's moving in the last 12 months of his contract, the fact that, we know that Boro were there was an expectation for the bulk of last season that he was going to leave. And although he's never been given a prolonged spell in the team, we've seen flashes, haven't we, rather than anything concrete could establish himself. What do you reckon?
I get the feel. I think the notion of Boro being able to sell him for any kind of reasonable amount of money to recoup anything like what they paid for him is that ship's probably sailed, given that he's been to Boca, they've said no. So I think if that's your mindset, I just wonder if Boro think, do you know what? Let's give it till January. Let's have him in and around the first team squad till January. And he either kicks on and becomes a valuable asset, and then we'll have a think about contract talks in January, or it becomes abundantly clear that it's not right, it's not going to work, in which case you sell him in January, and all right, his value is probably goes down a little bit from where it's at now. But I don't think Boro are going to get big money for him now, whatever. Yeah. So I could see the rationale in that, because, you're right. They'll have a look at him in 2 weeks. Michael Carrick will get a good idea of where he's at and what he can offer. But you're not going to learn everything in that period, are you? And I think there's maybe an argument. Give it till January. Have a look at him, see. And then if you are cutting your losses in January, you're probably not losing an awful lot compared to what you get now.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm not going to dip into the big bag of cliches and say it could be like a new signing, but he's still very much a mystery in that I don't really know an awful lot more about him now than when Boro first signed him. In that we've clearly seen flashes, and he played mostly as a midfield player, hasn't he, in the games he's played? But you can't, I wouldn't be able to say now that he fits in brilliantly in that role or that role, because it's only flashes that we've seen, and even if he does get the chance to stay, and you would well expect that he's likely to feature or get more minutes under his belt against Real Betis on Saturday. One big obstacle, first things first, is getting in that team. Now, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Chuba Akpom, but if, and it's a big if, he was to move on this summer, well, you'd edge your bets on Boro replacing him or looking to replace him rather than thinking, well, we've got Payero to.
I guess what he does give you is a little bit of cover there that Boro maybe haven't had an awful lot. They have plenty of players who could play as a 10 if Chuba was to get an injury, but most of them will be better in a different position. You think of a McGree or a Force who who undoubtedly could play as a 10. You would imagine Rodgers, who you've just talked about, could play as a 10. Gilbert probably could play as a 10. Payero's another one in that category, I think. So maybe a little bit of valuable cover. Now, the other player who's obviously returned is Coulson, who you touched on there. And he seems a more obvious one that you definitely want in the squad next season. Given the fact that, Boro still haven't got a fullback tied up. We'll talk about Giles in a minute. That deal's been up and down all over in the summer. Sometimes it's looked on, sometimes it's looked off. At the minute, it kind of looks on again. But even if he arrives, the fact that Boller's gone, obviously to Turkey, you'd think that Coulson will be a valuable member of that squad if he's anywhere like. And I know we're only going off one, fairly meaningless friendly game, but from what you were saying, he certainly looked up to it in the week.
Yeah, because I think, and I put this to Michael Carrick when we spoke to him after the game, he's the type of left back Carrick like, isn't he? And nothing against Mark Bowler, because as we've talked about when he was kind of solid and reliable, but he was more of a left back, wasn't he? A defender than a left wing back. And I think, although we know that strengthening at left back remains a priority, as well as bringing in a striker or two, and obviously Ryan Giles is still a leading target. I think Carrick will look at Coulson as good cover at the least, really. We know if Giles comes in, that's going to be his spot, isn't it? But I do think Coulson fits well. He likes to get forward, doesn't he? He's 25 now, which is kind of remarkable, isn't it? Because you still think of him as a young lad, and Carrick was saying he's a senior player now. But he did his chances no harm on Wednesday night. He set up the opening goal, linked up well with Silvera, made a good block in Rotherham, had kind of won the first attack, actually, and Coulson covered well and made a good block. So, yes, we know that bringing in a left back, whether it's Giles or not, is going to happen in all probability before the start of the season. But yeah, I think Coulson is the type of player who will be a useful squad player this season.
So on Giles, then, as I say, it's been off and on and on and off and off and on and on again. The news or the soundings from the Midlands in the last 24 hours is that Wolves are pushing quite hard now to sign Aaron Cresswell from West Ham. That would then give them 4 left backs on their books. So, clearly there's room for manoeuvre there. I mean, where do you feel it's at? Having felt a week and a half ago that the soundings from Wolves was that Giles probably wouldn't be going, it now sounds like, having had another week of watching things, Lopetegui seems much more of the view that actually I need a new left back. And you've got to think that would then place massive question marks over Giles' future there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the suggestion seems to be that Cresswell, who's 33, I think, is going to come in, and then it'd be Cresswell and Hugo Bueno, who I think is 20, who kind of be left to battle for the left back spot. And I guess the thinking there is, Bueno is clearly highly rated there, but if a full season as first choice left back might be deemed a bit much, then you've got the experienced player alongside him, and you don't need 3 left backs, do you? They've got Altnori as well, although I think the suggestion seems to be that he'll go out on loan, which obviously leaves Giles. And again, the suggestion at that end seems to be that it'll be a permanent exit. And it does feel like kind of now's the time, isn't it? For if Giles is going to break into team, then surely it's now on the back of last season. And if he isn't, and Wolves are going to sell him, then equally now feels like the time to let him go, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which obviously then begs the question, will it be Boro who win the race to sign him? Because Luton have been in linked earlier in the summer.
I guess that's where you've got to hope that the experience of last season and, the fact that he clearly did enjoy it. He clearly, got a lot out of working with Carrick. Boro feel surely like the club are going to be up there challenging again this season. You'd like to think that there's a lot of boxes ticked there that all things being equal, Boro would have a really good chance of getting that deal done.
Yeah, and we asked Carrick about it on Wednesday night, and that story is going online on Friday morning first thing, and obviously it'll be in the paper as well. And Carrick, kind of being Carrick, didn't give much away, but he certainly didn't rule out the chances of Giles coming back. So it feels like, doesn't it? We've been talking about it for a couple of months now. It feels like we're going to have clarity on the matter one way or another in the next week or so, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. Now, will we get clarity in the next week or so over Chuba? I mean, obviously we haven't seen him yet in pre-season. All kinds of conspiracy theories flying around on social media. Our understanding, and certainly Michael Carrick's on the record stuff, is that, there is a genuine injury there. They don't want to take any risk, which is understandable. It's still fairly early in pre-season. They still hope to see something of him in pre-season, although whether that'll be enough to get him in the starting lineup for the first actual game of the season, time will tell. But I mean, is there any reason to be alarmed here, or are we just kind of as we were, just with a player who is carrying a knock?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to be alarmed about the injury. Like you said there, the genuine, all the talk. I haven't heard anything to suggest that the injury talk is not genuine.
Yeah.
I think he picked up the knee injury either on the last day of last season or certainly in one of the last games of the season. First things first, from a football perspective, Carrick wants him in, doesn't he? Because you're a couple of weeks away from the start of the season now, and last season's best player hasn't trained all.
Well, you would imagine that if we don't see him against either Betis or Bradford, it's starting to look unlikely that he's going to start that first game, because then even if he can do half an hour against Auxerre, he's had a really, really limited amount of training time then to pitch him straight in for that first game. So I think you'd want to see him at least play some part in one of these next two games, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been no suggestion that he's in training yet, has there?
No.
So absolutely, you're only a couple of weeks off now. So first things first, you obviously want him getting back on the pitch, and then obviously there's the contract situation. Again, we talked to Carrick about that after the game on Wednesday night, and those quotes will be online in the next couple of days. But Carrick, said he's our top scorer. He was last season's star man. Obviously, he wants him on the pitch and wants him playing for the club. And for all, obviously, Akpom is moving into the last year of his deal now. There hasn't been an awful lot of speculation, has there, or links?
No,
talk of interest.
It's not been one where you're aware of agents, saying this, saying that, ringing
about and putting him.
Yeah, we haven't seen or heard anything of that, and I don't think that's just us. I think that's the general case, because, like you say, there haven't been clubs constantly being linked with him this summer, so it doesn't feel like a sudden transfer or anything that's likely to happen. But obviously, that's going to be the one that you're kind of waiting and wondering about all the way till the end of August, isn't it?
And we talked, didn't we, last week about contracts, and since then, Dael Fry's signed a new deal.
Yeah.
Josh Coburn signed a new deal, which leaves Paddy McNair, who's been linked. There's been a few clubs linked there, hasn't there? Leicester, Leeds, Luton.
Yeah.
And obviously Chuba. And Chuba's the one, isn't it, where it's far too early to be a distraction. But while that's in the background, Carrick will get repeatedly asked about it, won't it? It'll repeatedly be a talking point. It does feel like that kind of wants resolving one way or another before the season, doesn't it? You don't want that to run into January, February, for example, do you?
No, because like you say, if the transfer window shuts and there's been no suggestion that contract talks have even really started in earnest, then yeah, that will be a talking point all the way through the first half of the season ahead of January, which if he's not going to sign, would then be your last chance to sell for any meaningful amount of money. So.
And you mentioned injuries there. I mean, the other thing, Johnny Howson, obviously captain, hasn't played yet. He's got a niggle. Carrick said that because obviously he had injury at the end of last season. He did start. Yeah. He did start pre-season, but then picked up an injury. So it's not just a continuation of the one from last year. Paddy McNair's got an Achilles injury. Obviously Coburn. So I know it's part and parcel, isn't it, of pre-season and stepping up, but there are a few question marks, aren't there, with the season fast approaching?
Yeah, definitely over who, not just who's going to be available for that first game, but who's going to be at a point in their fitness journey, if you like, where Carrick thinks, right, I'm ready to start them. Like I say, if we go another week down the line and in these next two friendlies, there's still no Howson, still no McNair, then you would start to be thinking, well, there's every chance Boro will have to be going without them in the first game of the season. So what we've got 3 friendlies left, haven't we? We've got the Betis game at Chesterfield, Bradford next midweek, and then the Auxerre home game. Do you think, obviously, the next 2, you would imagine, will still be mix and match. That Auxerre game, some managers, the week before the start of the season, really like to play their team, don't they? And it's pretty obvious that that's the team, all things being equal, that's going to start the next game. Some managers will continue mix and match and right the way through and almost write off all pre-season matches and say we just start when we start. Obviously, we don't know with Carrick because he wasn't here last pre-season. What do you think? Do you think the team that starts against Auxerre, all things being equal, will be as near as possible to what's going to start when the real action begins?
I think it's more likely to take shape, isn't it, over the course of next week? Carrick said on Wednesday night that it wasn't about kind of who started; it was all about the minutes basically, and why he obviously played a 45 for the 2 different teams, but for the 2 different halves. Sorry, but that first half team, with the exception of probably putting Fry in for Vandenberg at this stage, and obviously you think McGree would be in the starting 11 on the first day of the season. You put Fry and McGree into there, and as things stand at the minute, probably Force as well, actually. As things stand at the minute with players fit, you're probably not a million miles away from the team
might be there. Yeah.
From the team you'd pick. Yeah. So I suspect it might well take shape. You're at Betis and Bradford. And you would think, wouldn't you?
Well, I wish I was at Betis.
Yeah, we'd have been.
Yes, I'm at the game. Let's put it like that. Yeah. I'm at the Betis game, and I'm at Bradford, and then you're at doing the Auxerre game. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing you'd think, as I said, the kind of intensity was pretty high in the first half against Rotherham. You'd think, although it's obviously nowhere near the competitive standard, it does get increasingly kind of faster and better, doesn't it, as the summer moves on? So.
Funny enough, I would imagine the Bradford game will be the most intense one because I suspect Hughes will want them pretty much bang at it as their big main game before the start of their season. Betis, you often wonder with these kind of overseas clubs on trips based there, how at it are they going to be? Probably the same to a degree might be true of Auxerre. The overseas clubs tend to be a week behind at least the English clubs because their seasons tend to start that week later, certainly if they're top flight, which obviously they are. So, yeah, I think the Bradford one might be the most like a competitive game.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that'll be a good game. And there's some former Boro lads in their team.
Yeah.
He's one of them who obviously came through the ranks at Boro. Harry Chapman was there last season. Is Brad Halliday there as well? I think obviously Adam Clayton was there last year before he went to Rochdale. Yeah. So, and just one other thing, which we haven't mentioned, obviously, since we last did a vid, there's been a bit of transfer news. Liam Roberts out and Jamie Jones in. The goalkeeper overhaul continues. We suspect that's probably going to be it, wouldn't it, with keepers now this summer?
It's got to be.
Share of movement in and out.
Otherwise, they'll be starting to sell ones they've only just bought.
It's a good move for Roberts, isn't it, Barnsley?
Yes. Yeah, he needed to get away. And to be honest, I think we said, didn't we, in the last vid that there was every chance that Roberts would be going because he's not at a stage of his career where he wants to sit and be third choice, which is what he was looking at. So I think he'll do pretty well there. So let's end then with kits. What do we think? I like it. I like the away kit. I know there's been I thought when I first saw it, I thought that'll go down really well. People like that. I've seen more negative than positive about it, which I'm surprised at, really. It's, home kits have to look a certain way, don't they? Away kits, you've always got that little bit more leeway with. It is a bit different to what Boro normally wear. Obviously, the blue and the yellow, if you haven't seen it, it's on our website now. You'll see it in the next couple of days if you haven't. What do you think?
Yeah, it's Bocker, isn't it? But you mentioned it. Yeah. You mentioned it at the start of the vid. The first thing you say, I like the central badge. I don't know why, but that's always something I like. And the thing about the Middlesbrough, the Eramus and the Middlesbrough logo in the inside collar again. Like I know you can't see that, but I like the little touches like that. It was like a few years ago when they had the Cattle and Cane lyrics on. On the inside or the back?
Hercules, wasn't it?
Yeah. I I love blue and black striped Boro away kits. Like
Right.
I know it's not going to happen, but
Yeah.
I'd love every year Boro to have the blue and black.
That.
Yeah.
It's funny how, isn't it, when you see a kit, certain players jump into your
I was
mind.
just going to say that. Yeah. Who springs to mind then if I say the blue and black?
Emerson.
When I say the blue and white, you remember the sky blue and white one?
Yeah.
Gaza springs to mind in
Gaza. Yeah.
I've seen a few compare this one to, obviously not in colours, but just in style. Remember the purple and white away one? That'll have been probably late 90s.
Yeah.
But I don't. At first, I wasn't. My first glance was, I wasn't 100% sure. But the more I look at it, the more I like it.
Well, it's one of them, isn't it? If they win the title wearing it wherever towards the end of next season, it'll be remembered as an all-time classic. And if Boro finish mid-table this season and they wear it 10 times and lose 7 of them, then it'll be consigned to the dustbin of kit history. But
that's
it. I don't mind it. I've got to imagine, having not seen let's see what sometimes it changes when you see them actually playing it. But at the minute, I prefer it to the home one.
Yeah, and I want to get my little lad one actually for when we go away, and I was waiting to see what the away one was like before taking the plunge. I think I'll go the away. I'm going to get him the Gisborough Town shirt because we live in Gisborough, so that's the local shirt. And yeah, I think I'll go the Boro away as well.
There you go, beautiful. Well, I've got 2 girls and all they want is dance gear. So until Middlesbrough bring out a ballet outfit or a
you won't be going to club shop.
Leotard, then I'll be no good, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Brilliant, excellent. So you're at Chesterfield on Saturday. We'll obviously have live coverage.
Yeah, we'll have the full normal shebang, live blogs, report, bit of analysis, some reaction from Carrick and hopefully one of the players after the game, and then it'll be the same at Bradford in the week. And then, like we say, you're doing the Auxerre game, and then we'll have a week, and the real business will continue. I think the plan is at some point in the week leading up to the start of the season, we're going to do a live one of these. So hopefully get some thoughts and some live questions. But we'll bill it, quite early in advance. So hopefully we can get it at a time that suits people and we can have a bit of live interaction and everything. And then we'll probably also look to get at least one more guest in before the season gets underway once things get formalised a bit more. But for now, thanks for watching. As I say, like, subscribe, send us your comments, give us any thoughts, keep in touch. Hopefully log on when we're covering the games in this next week or so. And we'll be back next week with another You Are My Boro.